On today's Hiwatt Soundbite, we're having a look at one of the most powerful tools in your studio, the mute button. Well, I'm very excited about today's session. I'm going to take a few minutes and share what I believe is absolutely one of the most important things that I've learned in 30 years of engineering and producing music. Through that experience, I've learned that probably the single most important tool that I have available to me is the mute button, or mute function in some cases. Let me sort of explain what I'm talking about. 20 years ago, I used to make a fundamental mistake when I mixed. I would literally spend 50 to 70% of the time I had allotted for that mix to the instrumental track. I wouldn't even have the lead vocal on until the last half of the mix I was doing. Yeah, that was absolutely crazy. In contrast, today when I go about mixing, I probably get to that lead vocal track within the first 10 minutes. Every single time today, I'll put that track up and I'll probably put a very basic rhythm section together, including maybe the bass guitar or bass synth line. And then immediately I'll put that lead vocal up. I mean it, like probably within the first 10 minutes of that mix, I've already got the lead right up and in the center of that mix. Why? Because it's all about the lead vocal. It has always been about the lead vocal. So 20 years ago, I sort of felt it was my responsibility to put everything in and to make it all work. The way I approach it today is so much different. Once I have that really rudimentary rhythm section up with maybe a bass line and that lead vocal, well, I will literally take every single track that has been provided to me for this mix and I'll put it up against that lead vocal. If that track is complementing that lead vocal, then more than likely I'm going to highlight this track and I'm going to make a big deal about it. If I put this track up and this track is doing anything but complementing that lead vocal, more often than not, I'm going to mute that track. Now, doesn't mean I'm going to mute the whole track. It just means that maybe during that verse, there might be something going on this overdub part. Maybe it's an arpeggiated part or whatever it is. If it isn't complementing that vocal, it's just about for sure not going to make it into the mix. So this is a fundamental change in how I approach mixing today. I get that lead vocal up really quickly, and I base almost every decision after that around that lead vocal. So for today's session, I've opened up a couple of very typical examples of what I'm talking about with this mute function. Okay, so full disclosure, the first example I'm using today is my own band, Blackline. This song is called Sedition. It was the opening track on our debut record. And just for perspective, let's listen to a bit of this track.
Been roaming this world, my mind is unfurled to the danger of who we are. Spooked by who knows, the news story flows. In between us, that's how it goes. But what in the world is coming down the road? What in the world?
Okay, I really love this song, Sedition. Just for a moment, let's listen to that section right where the drums kick in again.
What in the world is coming? I guess only a God knows.
Okay, so for reference, let's listen to the track that the guys provided me when they first sent me the song before I started digging into it. Check it.
What in the world is coming? I guess only a God knows.
Okay, well, the first thing I notice about that reference mix is there are probably 5 different bass lines that are all going on at the same time during that vocal. And this is exactly what I'm talking about when I say draw up that lead vocal, start adding all of these other overdubs, and if something isn't complementing that vocal, simply just mute it. In just about every instance, it's the correct decision. Well, one of the incredible collaborators that contributed to this project was the great Paul Barker. I mean, are you kidding me? Playing bass guitar? The guy's a legend. Well, so in this particular case, of course, I'm going to focus on Paul's bass, and I'm going to figure out what to do with that bass guitar and that sound to make it prominent, to make it the bass. Okay, so when I listen to that reference mix and I go into this multi-track and I start listening to all of the bass lines that have been provided and in that reference, what I'm going to do when I'm going through those bass lines is I'm going to pay attention to what they're doing with the lead vocal. So when I go through these individual tracks and I find one of them that really locks in with that vocal, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be my lead. In this case, I'm going to use that acoustic bass that Paul played as the absolute root. That's going to be my main bass line. And then I'm going to look for other tracks that might complement that part. Well, there's another synth bass that's sort of answering that bass line in a really cool way. Check it.
What in the world is...
Check him out soloed. Yeah, so there are a couple of sort of sustainy kind of bass sounds that I just eliminated from that part of the track. Why? Because they absolutely weren't contributing to the vocal. So this is a practice that I get up to all the time, is sort of determining what it is that works into the track and what it is that doesn't. For the things that do work, I highlight them. I make them a really big deal, as is the case with that bass guitar of Paul's. Instead of just letting it kind of boom, boom, ba-boom, boom, I made it a big deal. I put it into a lot of compression. I took all the top end off. I sort of turned it into a big reggae sound, and I made it a really fundamentally big bass sound, and it works really well. You know, my job as a producer is to make this song the very best song that I can. If that requires me eliminating one of the overdub parts that were supplied to me and sort of highlighting another one, what in the world is wrong with doing that? You know, in my experience of producing music today, this is something that most artists really, really appreciate, is just this kind of practice of going in and really making decisions on what should stay and what should go. Okay, so I've got the track queued to a little 4-bar break before the kind of second verse kicks in. There's a really cool modular synth that one of the guys added that sort of does this kind of climbing thing. I really dig the part. It's just that the part lands right on top of the lead vocal. Check it out. So this will often happen where I come across a sound that I really, really dig, but it sort of stomps on something in the track, particularly the vocal. When that happens, I'll look for another place to fly that into. In this particular case, I literally have like a 4-bar break that happens right before that vocal. Just made sense to me to sort of grab that little line and just shift it back 4 bars. Let's have a listen.
Been trying for years to ease all my fears.
I take liberty in doing this a lot in other people's projects. It's just something that I get into as a producer, is listening to that lead. When I hear something that sort of stomps on it or gets in its way, and I really like the part, I'll figure out another place in that song to use that part. You know, would I call that heavy-handed production? Absolutely not. This is my job as a producer, is to sort of figure out how to put all of these tracks together and make the very best possible song that I can. You know, when that requires muting things and moving things around, it's just something you should not even hesitate to do as a producer. Just dive right in. If you hear something that might work better in a different place, just go ahead and make the bold decision to move it there. Always be pushing that lead vocal and that attention towards that lead. It's so, so important. Okay, another great example in this track. I'm going to play the bridge section of the original reference mix that was given to me to work on before I got into this track. All kinds of stuff's going on here. Check it.
Is this addition? Just repetition? Is this addition? Just repetition? Is this addition?
Of course, that reference is before any of the tuning that I did on any of these tracks. But notice just how busy it is. There's just so many things going on. Now let's check out where I went with this thing. You know, in this particular section of this song, it just boiled down to a couple of overdub tracks that were just beautiful sounding and so complementary to that vocal. So really, I just simplified this passage by eliminating some of the kind of sequences that were going on, focusing on the parts that really did work. You know, we ended up overdubbing an entire string arrangement over this part. I never would have had space to do that had I not gone in and eliminated some of those original tracks. It's just so much more beautiful sounding. Well, just for a moment, let's go ahead and hide this Pro Tools session. And I'm going to open up a couple of screen captures that I've done recently to just show another couple of examples of just how much editing and muting that I get into in any typical mix. You know, when this track was delivered to me to mix, all of these tracks that are muted here were all playing off the top. So a great example of what I often get up to when creating intros and stuff is just absolutely being heavy-handed. Go in there and just start muting stuff. Really effective. Here's another track. You know, look at all the parts that I've got separated and muted in place in this track. Unbelievable. I've got another screen capture of the same session a little further down. So I encourage you to be bold. Start making good decisions in your productions. The very next time you're commissioned to do a production for someone, just dig right into it. Put up that lead vocal track. Listen to every single track that that artist has provided you against that lead vocal and make decisions. Find the things that really work well and make them shine. Take the things that are absolutely not working and lose them. Well, it just so happens that my own band Blackline is dropping a brand new EP today. The name of the EP is Layers. It's a track from our original debut record that's been remixed by Annie Hall and Silent Servant, and even the legendary Bon Harris and myself did a mix on this thing. Well, this new EP streets today, and you can get all the details at blackline.black. Check it.